the hair just kind of added to the decoration. It was a wonderful cover.
Yes,
And you've got a great publisher, and they're very supportive. And I got a couple of emails saying, oh, I'm so happy you're having an event, and they're just, let us know how it goes and all of that kind of stuff. So for those of you who may not know Terri, and you all may already know her, I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Terri-Lynne DeFino was born and raised in New Jersey, but escaped to the wilds of Connecticut, where she still lives with her husband and her cats. She spends most of her days in her loft, in her woodland cabin along the river, writing about people she's never met. Other days she can be found slaying monsters with her grandchildren. If you knock on her door, she'll most likely be wearing a tiara. She'll also invite you in and feed you, because you can take the Italian girl out of Jersey, but you can't take the Jersey Italian out of the girl. Welcome, Terri. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. The grandchildren in question are back there.
Yeah. And you will sign afterwards?
I will absolutely sign. Anybody wants their book signed. I am from New Jersey. My parents are here. They are still in New Jersey. My husband is also from Jersey, and actually, that one was born in Jersey too. Oh yeah, my granddaughter too.
This one.
So I really want to know what you want to know, but first I'll just give you a brief overview. I have a fun story to tell about how this book came about. When, oh gosh, it was back in 2000, doesn't matter, a few years ago. My younger daughter lives in Brooklyn, and she was walking to work one day. She works in Manhattan, and she found on a signpost, on a lamppost, a little flyer that somebody had stuck up there. And it was a picture of an old man wearing a tuxedo, holding a single red rose, and it said, "Is your grandfather Jewish, single, and looking for love?" $10,000 reward for a match made, and then an email address. So she snaps this picture for me, she sends it to me, and she said, "Mom, this is your next book." And I said, "Oh, I think you're right." I put it up on my webpage, on my Facebook, and my editor for the Bar Harbor Retirement Home for Famous Writers and Muses, she said, "Somebody needs to write me this book." So I said, "Sure, I will," and I did. And a year and some later, I sent her the manuscript, and the rest is history. That's this. And but it all started off with this funny little old man on this lamppost. So my publicist a few months ago said, "Did you ever try the email address?" And I said, "No." So I did. I have never heard back, which is really sad, because I'd love to have a better ending to that story. But you just never know where your inspiration is going to come from. So I'm going to start off, because if you have anything you want to ask me about anything, whether it's this book, my trip to Europe, or whatever, anything you want to know. I don't want to spend the whole time just talking at you. I want to know if there's anything that you would like for me to talk about. So Sharon, you better have something. You know everything about me anyway.
I do.
I'm gonna ask you a question. Why did you put all the Italian New Jersey slang messages? How did that idea come to your mind?
Okay, well, he's my husband, so.
I never asked it.
Actually, that's a good question. The beginning of every chapter is a Jersey Italian word that I grew up hearing, my parents grew up hearing. I never knew they were real words. I thought there, especially Skelton and Gorp was one of my dad's favorites. I thought for sure he made that up. And Shkula Macaroon. Come on. And it wasn't until I watched The Sopranos about 10 years after they aired that I heard these words, like from people that weren't my family. And I couldn't believe it. I really thought my family made up most of these words. And so I started researching them, and I found all of them, and the ones that I couldn't find, because I like to find where they originated, what they originated as in Italian. Because, Italian is Italian, but there are 5 million different dialects in Italy alone. And we're from Southern Italy. where Southern Italians tend to cut off the last syllables in their words, and most of the people that came over were Southern Italians. So that's where you get a lot of the, like, gabagool, stand up, Jamie. Gabagool. It's actually Coca-Cola, but gabagool because we cut off the ends of the words. So, but that's how I
It's
started.
delicious too.
I started looking them up, and that became part of the story. Before I actually started writing it, it became part of the story. Is this person writing this journal of words?
Right, no offense, but my daughter and son-in-law read this also. He's from the Bronx, she's also from Connecticut like me. And they both said, it's a whole different species of Italian. Because we have all those words, it's Sicilian, because we're Sicilian, and they're all pronounced differently.
Mhm.
They all mean something, a little harsh, but most of them.
Yeah. I'm part to say.
Yeah.
It is, and it's crazy how even in New Jersey, if you're in northern Jersey, you have certain words. If you're in southern Jersey, you have different words. If you're up in Boston, you have different ways of saying all these words. You can distill them all down to the same words in Italian, but everybody says them differently. So something, what are you saying in?
Well, like sculapa, it's always sculapa. And I think it's on the first page where you say gravy instead of sauce.
Yeah.
We gasp.
That is such a
Okay,
thing.
open eyes. Open eyes.
And that is such a huge.
It
I-
is huge.
My friend
huge.
Nancy always says gravy though.
Yeah, we do great.
Yeah.
That is such, I can't believe how many, I belonged to this growing up Italian in America, on Facebook, until they started getting too political on that. But they had these huge debates on whether it was gravy or sauce. Oh my God, as long as you don't call it marinara, I'm fine. Marinara.
So tell us a little about your book.
Well, Marina is a 70-year-old widow who is, as anybody who is Italian, do we have Italians here? You're Italian. Anybody else of Italian? Well, we know you.
I'm half Italian, but on my dad's side, so my cousins were more Italian than we were. But I got this scarf in Italy, so that's why I wear it. Rome.
And you talk with your hands.
Yes, you're Italian. That counts. But you know, it's not just Italians. I know that Greeks, Armenians, I mean, everybody has these big families. It's the traditional, I guess, European. But Verena is taking care of everybody, as moms often will. Her grown children and her 92-year-old mother, and the store that she and her husband started back in the 70s or whenever it was. And she's just tired of doing it all, and she just wants to go on vacation. But she won't spend money on herself, which, you know, a lot of moms do that too. So she saves up and she saves up and she saves up to take this river cruise. And I'm not going to say what happens, but things happen that try to get in the way, but she's determined. But her mother and her daughter, who's always causing trouble, have decided that her real problem is that she doesn't have a man in her life. And so they go about, that's where that poster came in. They go about trying to find her men without her knowing, because she would never do that. So they put up flyers and they try to get men to come in to strike up a conversation. And mom doesn't realize, wow, all of a sudden, all these guys are coming into the shop. What's going on here? So that's, but then you have the younger daughter who's always in trouble. She's 35, but you know, she's always in trouble. And there's a lot of people in this book. So I've been asked for a family tree, but you'll figure it out.
Was it fun? Was it fun to write?
It was so much fun. It was a really fun story to write because there's no one person in any of the characters, but there's a lot of everybody I know in them. So, you know, my mom always said, she would call me as she was reading the advanced reader copy. Is this me? You meant me, didn't you? Yeah, I might have there, but not there.
Tell me a little about your publishing process, because in this day and age, brava for getting published. I mean, it is a huge, big, long, protracted deal for
It
some
is.
people. but other people that have developed relationships over time, it then becomes a little easier. So who, how, is it a different
Well,
publisher than?
Yeah, it's, no, Bar Harbor and.
Bar Harbor
yeah, was
is
both
still-
the same publisher, same editor, Rachel Kahn with William Morrow, that's
The
division of
HarperCollins.
HarperCollins. Those are I've published, this is my 8th novel, actually. The first 3 novels I wrote were with a very small micro publisher out in Kansas City. And I was writing fantasy at the time, and it was such a tremendous experience it was more like almost like a commune of artists and writers, because we all were in each other's business, and this guy is my cover artist and we go back and forth on my cover. It was a very inclusive sort of experience. But of course I sold maybe, all told, a few $100. It's a small press. You don't have that kind of reach. The second 3 books that I wrote were romance novels with Kensington, which is a New York publisher that is now considered a small press, because, not to bore everybody, but they're all of the vast amounts of publishers in the world, in the country, are now under 5. So there's the big 5 they call it, and the big 5 has hundreds of publishing entities underneath them, which William Morrow is one of HarperCollins. There were 6, but was it Penguin who bought?
No, HarperCollins now owns Houghton Mifflin Harcourt.
Yes, that too happened. But before that, when it was the big 6 and went down to the big 5, it was,
Oh, Penguin
Oh,
and then
Penguin
Random
bought-
House.
yes,
And now they're Penguin Random.
yes, Penguin Random House. So they're all, and
Oh,
getting in
Random
is
Penguin.
really, really hard. It's so hard. But I published the 3 romance novels with Kensington. Which we also have another Kensington. This one was another funny story involving this child. My children are not just my inspiration, but they're my doorways into the publishing world. When I was shopping, the book before this was The Bar Harbor Retirement Home for Famous Writers and Their Muses. It started off not that name. But when I started shopping this around, we were getting some nibbles, but ultimately no thanks kind of thing. And my daughter over here, I was on my way to New York to see the Christmas lights with some friends. And I don't remember why I was talking to you or texting with you.
You like me?
Well, but she said, "Oh, Mom, by the way, did I ever tell you I'm really good friends with the senior editor at Harper and William Morrow?" I was like, "No, Jamie, you did not." She said, "Would you like me to see if she's interested, if she's taking on any books right now?" And I was like, "Yeah." So before I got off the train, she had my novel. She said, "Yes, and tell her agent to send it over." My agent sent it over, and then she bought the book. This was in December, and they picked me up in January, which I was real happy about, because that was pretty quick.
Oh, yeah.
And I've written several other books since then, which is really interesting, because you figure, you got your foot in the door, you've got a really good book, it's doing well, they're going to take everything you want. I've written 3 other books between Bar Harbor and this one, and every time I sent it to Rachel, she said, "I love it, it's great, not your second book."
Oh.
And I every time I was like, but you liked it. But honestly, now I absolutely understand what she was saying, because Bar Harbor did well, fine for what it was. It was literary fiction, which does not necessarily have a huge reach. And that's what a lot the other ones that I was sending her were more along those lines. She was looking bigger for this one. And this one's bigger. I mean, the first one was a trade paperback, and I don't even remember how much of a print copy, how many print copies. This is way, way bigger. So she knew the trajectory that she wanted to be on, and I trusted her. But it's hard. I mean, I'm writing something now that I'm hoping that she'll pick up, but just because it doesn't mean you will.
Well, I listen to a lot of different struggles, because like everything else in every other business, everything is tightened down a little.
Mhm.
So the fact that Bar Harbor came out in the before times
Mhm.
made the fact that you don't have to start from scratch after everything has changed.
Yes, oh, wow, yeah. I
you
didn't even
know,
think of that.
Well, from our standpoint, what is made available to us is different. How it's made available to us is different. Clearly, you look at HarperCollins as an entity, and they just settled a strike that'd been going on for months. So sometimes it affected us on the distribution end, sometimes it didn't. So the publishing industry is really taking a look at who they are,
Mhm.
and to not have to get in the middle of that drama. I mean, every publisher, like any business, has drama. So bravo to you again, bravo again for coming out with a book that hits right. I mean, your agent was right, your publicist was right, your publisher partner was correct.
Yeah.
This fits right in with what people are looking for right now, because I look around and there are still serious, intense books coming out, and that's fine. This is what they're looking for.
Yep.
This is what they're looking for. They're looking for a great story with good characters, and they want to eat it up.
Something
So
that's
good
not
for
going
you.
to make them want to put their heads in the oven when they're done eating.
Seriously.
That's
It is,
pretty
and-
cool. Yes, do
Like,
you?
oh,
I'm
yeah.
not to say anything bad about, I love books like that, Corner McCarthy, love them, but it's, right now, it's absolutely true, and she picked this up, it was during the pandemic, it was 18 months ago,
Oh, yeah.
and when we sent it to her, and like within hours, she called back and she said, "This is your second book."
That's so cool.
I was in the garage and Terry was screaming all nuts about it. And it's funny, to add what you said when they did the interview on the radio last Tuesday, there was a male and a female disc jockey, and they said exactly what you're saying, that this is a book that really is nice now, because all we get is nothing but doom and gloom, and it's finally a happy story, and it's nice to echo what you're saying. It's a
Yeah,
good
and
timing.
I'm not disrespecting anybody else's book either,
Right.
because some of them are beautifully written.
Mhm.
But I have people going, I just am not in the mood to read something that heavy right now. And often the question for a bookseller now is, do you want something with a lot of heft to it, or do you want something a little bit lighter? And 9 times out of 10, they're asking for things that are lighter, but everybody, I mean, our drawing line is it well written?
Yeah,
Because
they
we're
don't
too
want to lose
small
the
to take
literary
Yeah,
like,
right.
quality to it. They don't want it to be like shallow.
Right, exactly.
They still
So
want
me,
the
you get
the
2
characters.
Well,
What happened to the other 3 books?
well, there's always hope that where they want to take me is that people are buying my book just because they know I have another book out.
Right.
I have authors like that. There are authors that I don't care what they've written. Once I know they've got a book out, I buy the book. That's where every publisher wants their authors to go, is that name recognition. So maybe at some point, when it's just they're buying it, it's not that they're bad books, they're just not, they weren't right. And as much as I was disappointed when she said no thanks, I am 100% happy that she did. Because this whole career would have gone in such a different direction. This has the potential to be something bigger because it's got a much broader audience. It's something that there's a wider, what's the word I'm looking for? Not word.
Appeal.
Appeal. It's got a wider appeal for people who like literary fiction, people who like romance, people who like chick lit, people who just like funny. I think this is a funny book. I really thought it was pretty. I still laugh. So I'm a little simple, but
Sorry.
No,
I don't want
please.
to. So, being a lady of a certain age myself, I want to know why you chose somebody who's around 70 as your main character.
good question. I love to write about older people.
You're well done.
Yeah.
Well, Sylvia is old. the mom in the story is 92.
She's married to one too.
Okay, I'll give in to 92.
But, you know, I feel like I know how I feel when I read a book or I watch a TV show or a movie that everybody is 20, 30 years or younger than I am, and it's a good movie and it was fun. But you don't see older people represented as like real human, like real vital people who still fall in love and still get mad at their, you know, they're just always background or comic relief. And
Good point.
yeah, they tend to, and they're so interesting. I had a friend, Senia, and she probably started, Senia Lynch Reed. She was the daughter of, you know, Merrill Lynch. She was Edmund Lynch's daughter. And she used to come, I go away every April. Writer friends of mine, we take a beach house. And she used to come. She came sometimes, and she lived up in Vermont. She was older and she couldn't take the trip down by herself. So her driver would bring her to me, and then I'd take her down, and we would all spend the week on the beach. And she had just this way about her, and she had the best stories. Of course, they were the same stories over and over and over again, because she was on the edge of Alzheimer's when I met her. But she was just so interesting. And my own grandparents, my mom does our genealogy, and you know, there's just so much stuff that goes beyond what is now, you know, all the things that are popular now and stuff. It's just, they're so interesting to me. So I really love the Bar Harbor book is older people as well. The book I'm writing now is also older people. So I guess I'm kind of getting into this niche now of funny older people.
It's good because there aren't so many books.
There's not, there's really not.
Yeah.
And the Bar Harbor book started with, did you see Quartet by any chance?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That was what inspired that book, because here's these people that had a life that was so interesting, and they all knew each other, and they were all involved with one another, and here they are in an old folks home, and they're still bickering over the same things, and there's still grudges. I just thought that was hilarious and amazing and wonderful, and I think that we lose
That's
a lot.
sad too.
Yeah.
Well, not if you're Maggie Smith.
I just, and
No, I
the
know.
one- the realization is that they're coming to terms with things are winding down.
Mhm.
And sometimes people revel in that, and other times they don't.
Yeah.
Yes, Deb.
And it triggered in my mind as you're talking. I haven't thought about it in a long time, but a very interesting, very truthful incident. Terry will now remember as I start to tell about 10 years ago. My wife and I are friendly with the Mary Higgins Clark family. And Marilyn Clark, the daughter, is a very close friend of ours. And when Mary Higgins was alive, I bought her one of Terry's first or second book, I don't recall. Anyway, she read it, and she told me, your daughter's, she's got a good style. That was her word. And then she endorsed it, and then Terry sent her one of her books, and she signed that one, vice versa.
She read Bar
She
Harbor.
did say she's got a good style. So
Yeah, I saved that letter. My dad. Does anybody have anything that?
I just thought it was very relatable without being morbid. This past Christmas was the first Christmas for my family without either our patriarch and our matriarch. They both lived to be 97.
Oh,
and,
wow.
you know, and my mother passed in April. And the fact that it opened with Christmas Eve, at first I thought, maybe I shouldn't read this. Maybe this is gonna make me cry. But it was so freaking funny.
That makes me happy.
And the food sounded so good.
Did you do the Feast of Seven Fishes?
I took it over as my mother got older, and I thought it was just gonna be too close. But the way you presented it was just like, getting old is natural. It's normal, and you've got a big family to get you through it, and people pick up different roles, and the family still fights, even when they're trying to put on their best behavior. So I thought that was great, and I said,
Thank you.
okay, I can read the whole thing.
well, getting old isn't a privilege we all get. That's my newest motto lately is, the alternative
That's
isn't
a
great.
great one. That's a really great one.
Thank
It's important to grow disgracefully.
you. Disgracefully.
Yeah.
I like you.
Terry, piggybacking off what this young lady said about your other books, which I read all of the books. And they're all not being, what's the word,
Biased.
biased. They really are good. I never started reading because I'm a CPA by trade and all that type of stuff. Never read. When Terry and I married, I read a lot and I love her books. And it's surprising the other two are really, really nice. Yes, this one is stronger, but it seems a shame that nothing's going to happen with them.
Yes.
Well, still might.
Yes. Yeah.
It still might, because once they're like right now, that people ask me, so I think one of the reviews said something about it's been a long time since Bar Harbor came out, but it was worth the wait kind of thing, which made me really happy. And then I realized, yeah, it's been 5 years. When I was writing fantasy, it was more like every 12 to 18 months I was putting something out. When I was writing romance, now they want every 3 months, but when I was writing romance, it was every
Get outta
6
here.
months. I had 6 months between books.
Well, that ought to tell you how deep they are.
Yeah. Well, and it's hard to write something of any quality in that amount of time.
Well, that's my point. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
But
Here's another question. Do you think that those in-between books would fit with a different imprint? Have you and your agent ever talked about that
Yes.
kind of thing?
when I signed my contract with for Bar Harbor, part of that contract was a right of first refusal for the next one. So once they said no, thank you, I could take it elsewhere.
Oh, okay.
Very cool.
I can't remember.
Well, it's projects, right, now?
Yeah, I'm not saying that I've never do them. The first one that I finished after Bar Harbor, I don't think is a good follow. It's not where I am anymore as a writer.
Right.
I still
Cool,
love the
okay.
book.
Yeah.
And then the one that I wrote after that is very much more, it's very like Bar Harbor in that it's very literary fiction.
So are you working on
Nice.
something now?
I am. I'm writing something more along these lines. It's actually called Tommy and the Tagalongs Play at Asbury Park. And it's about 4 elderly women in mid-70s who their favorite band is playing a farewell concert down in Asbury Park. And they want to go, but rules of the home where they live say they can't. And that's just not gonna sit well. So it's a whole thing, it's an escape thing, it's how they get there and all the shenanigans along the way,
That's
so.
awesome.
It's very much along the lines of this, which is where I am now. So to go back and publish the ones that didn't get published, I don't know that I would do that now.
You changed the name.
I'm sure there's elements you'll probably want to use somewhere though,
Yeah,
because it's still.
well,
you.
there's one, I've written, one that I wrote in the meantime is just, it's weird. It's Death in the Mason Jar, and Death goes around with her little mason jar collecting souls that she has to deposit. And it's a really funny story. I love the story. It's probably my favorite thing that I've ever written. But it's one of those things that if somebody ever does pick it up, it's probably going to be under a different name. Because people who read this are not going to pick up Death in the Mason Jar. What the hell is this? So it's really, it's a career like anything else that it was kind of when I was writing fantasy and I could write whatever I wanted. And it was so fair, it was very freeing, but it was not very lucrative. So it's a trade-off. And right now I'm really happy being where I am. But it changes all the time.
But it sounds like you have people that you can trust to kind of sort of read the
Yes.
zeitgeist and then.
I absolutely trust that my team at HarperCollins, whether it's my editor or my publicist or the marketing, I absolutely trust them. They know what they're doing. They've never steered me wrong, so I'm trusting them.
It's awesome.
Yeah, it's good. I really like them.
And you've done your research too.
Did you have some? Yeah, you mentioned earlier when you were working with the group in Kansas City that you knew your cover artist. And what's that like now? Like what happens with your cover art in the Latin bar harbor and this one?
Well, they asked my opinion.
Well, that's good.
They don't necessarily take it, as, you know. With this book, they sent me 3 covers. And this one, the Bar Harbor was like photograph, real, what's the word I'm looking for? Just real life, whatever.
Yeah, really.
Realistic.
Yes, this is, they had an artist commission for this one. And he did this exact one, but with a red cover. And then they did different elements of the, if you look on the spine, there's a cornute, the little, one of these things.
Oh, yeah.
But
The
there was
horn.
a little horn.
That's an Italian, good
Okay.
luck.
Yes, good to know.
Yeah,
It could be many things.
there's always been a controversy as to what that is. But they sent me all 3 covers and they said, which one do you like? And I liked the one that they didn't pick. But now, I mean, if you look at this one, there's movement to it and it says a lot about what's in it. It used to be, you know, you have a cover to sell your book. Now it's more you have a title to sell your book because, you know, your book goes out like those, they're open, you know, face first, but then eventually you've only got a spine. And if they're reading that spine, then they can't say what this story is about. But the name of this book drove us insane because it started out, is your grandfather single and looking for love? Oh, that's a funny story. It started out, is your grandfather single and looking for love? And it kept going to spam folders as porn. So everybody who said, oh, the whole marketing part is that we love this title, but we can't use it. We do so much via the internet. If it's gonna go into spam folders everywhere, you're not doing yourself any favors. So what do we call this book? What do we call this book? And my editor, once she said, I was laying in bed staring at the ceiling and it came to me. Marina Palladino's Jersey Italian Love Story. I was like, but you know what? I hated the title for.
But it tells you what you need to know and it
Yep,
does the job
exactly.
done.
That's exactly what it is.
They had to have grown.
It does. And do you know Jill McCorkle?
I do.
She's wonderful.
I
I
love her.
really love her too.
She is,
I've done a
the
virtual
beach
event
trip
with her.
that I go on every
Yeah.
year. It started out in Bald Head Island. And she was the author in residence.
Mhm.
So she was my mentor I went back to that for 3 years and we became friends. And I really give her a lot of the credit for me pressing on because she was just so supportive. And I just remember her telling me as we're leaving, she said, honey, you shine.
Aw.
And that is always but we've kept in touch over the years and it was so cool that here she was the mentor and now she's blurbing the cover of my book. And it was just like the moment, it was just surreal. It was awesome. But yes, Jill is a darling.
She's fine people.
Yeah. Have we?
Can I do one more?
Absolutely.
Please.
You can do 10 more. I don't know.
What made you decide to color your hair all these different colors?
My hair has been the color since 2014.
Oh, so before.
Oh, yeah, I've been doing, well, everything you see color is white. I went very white, very young. And I kept dyeing it and I would get that line, you know, that line, I hate that line. And finally I was like, I don't want this anymore. I'm gonna just have it highlighted and I'm just gonna let it go in. And then as it was growing in, it was all white. I was like, I can do pretty colors and I don't have to bleach my hair. So I've been doing it for a long time and I wanted to stop actually. But my editor said, you can't stop now. It's part of your thing. Yeah, so.
That's awesome.
So I've got a little while longer.
So cool.
I think it's so cute. What are you doing? No, troublemaker over there.
You found a book.
Oh.
Oh, that's so
He's not
funny.
listening to your beautiful speech.
Called out, called out.
Tattle.
Totally called out.
Says me.
Is there anything anybody else would like to know about publishing in general? Any questions about, are anybody here writers besides me and Sharon? You are? Anything?
Gabby's
the
book
work?
is right on our rack over here.
That's my memoir, my debut novel is coming out.
Oh, congratulations.
But you know,
I'm so happy. What's it called?
a beginner's guide to starting over.
Oh.
Well, it's nice.
Yeah, these long titles, you know, the only problem is getting them
I
spotted.
know, it is hard. I mean, the Bar Harbor Retirement Home for Famous Writers and Musicians, that was a
Yeah,
hard
no,
one.
it's good on the hardback, it's
Yeah.
tough on the paper. And it wasn't like a thick trade bound, you had to get it.
Yeah, it was hard, and then, you know how you have that spine that you can see, you're gonna really have to get
I know.
it to see what that one says.
What was the working title of that book?
It started out Traeger's Lunatics.
That's what it was.
Yeah, and then.
Citrate.
Dr. Traeger.
Yeah, Dr. Traeger. But then it was, when we were shopping it around, it was the pen. And
Oh, that's
everybody
right.
said,
It's
oh,
like
what is
that,
that,
yeah.
like the Orange is the New Black? And, okay, we're not gonna call it the pen either. That was another one that gave us fits. It took forever to find a title for. But once again, it says everything you need to know.
Just long, perfect but long.
Except for I get so many complaints that there's not enough Bar Harbor.
Oh,
We went up there and everything,
I have to
did
tell
a
you.
presentation.
Yep, they asked me to come up, that was fun. Just a little side, it's funny, you know, like the reader reviews on Amazon. I do read my reader reviews, not all of them, I try, but my favorite, all-time favorite review was I got a 1-star review. And it said, I really loved the book, but the book smells funny.
Oh my God. 1-star reviews
So I could
sometimes
only
are
give it a
gold.
1. But that's my favorite review. It's the funniest thing I've
Yeah.
ever seen in my life.
That's a title, by the way.
Some books smell funny.
What
So
about
I guess
I really love the book, but the book smells funny.
the review that you're like, the book is a 5-star review, but I didn't love the audio narrator's voice.
Oh, my God. So, and oh, I got one for this one. So funny. Obviously a young man, by the way, he was talking and he said, I don't know, I liked this book because, you know, there's a gay character in it and I'm gay, but everyone was so old.
Well, there is a person out on Amazon, and I know that 2 or 3 of the authors that we've known have had him complain and give 1 stars and stuff, and it really is demoralizing, frankly. Or it was for them, and it turned out to be the same person. And I asked the author, they said, yes, someone who isn't published, someone who's been turned down a bunch of times, and all of his reviews are negative.
It's really hard sometimes. I mean, I try not to, I love the positive reviews, of course. So I've gotten some
You can't
like
take them to
3
heart.
stars that were better than some of the 5 stars that I got. You know, I read the text.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's like, I don't like when people start, I mean, if you're a writer or in the business or an English teacher or something, you know, you can start nitpicking about all the little stuff. But when somebody's like, oh, the writing was just not tight enough. Please.
It's an Italian gesture, I believe.
I'm just raising my hand belatedly because when you said, or, you know, is anybody a writer? And I didn't raise my hand, but I just started writing a little bit, so I felt for me, inside of me, that I had to raise my hand. Because
You
like I
do.
read a poem on radiation. and
Writers,
then,
right.
That my irreplaceable radiologist or whatever, medical things, but yeah, but I'm.
Good for
starting to
you.
write.
Yay.
Exciting. It's good.
Writers right.
Mhm.
You know?
Well, that's what I said, because I thought about the whole radiation process. I told my friend who is a poet and who's been published in over 50 places. I said there, because I had to do it twice, I'm like, there's a poem in here. I says, if I was a poet, I would, you know, write a poem about this. But then I've been working with this physician coach a little bit, and he was like, and then I realized, well, if I wrote a poem about it, then I would be a, but you know, I am a poet, right? So I did. And it might be published at Anne's Place and stuff like that.
That's amazing.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Good for you getting it out, because
Yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
I wrote a lot of poetry. Not saying it was great poetry, but I wrote a lot of poetry. It's all on my blog. And it's so, there's something about poetry that just really, even if it doesn't have to be great, it's just the words that you get out onto the page. It's so cathartic. And I know that sounds kind of cheesy, but it really is.
For me, it
You're
was
trying
just
to
that one thing,
condense
like,
your feelings into small packages on the
Yep.
page, so
It
it's.
is.
right,
It is, it's
in
very
general, I'm
important.
not into poetry, but I thought that whole experience specifically, I felt like it had to be told in like a poem.
Well, we had this author come in and she had written like memoirs and like stuff before, but she didn't write poetry until she was in what, her 60s? Because she was told that as a kid that she did not write good poetry.
Oh.
So she
I
spent her
think that's a
whole
common
life,
story.
yeah. It's like you shouldn't bother. And so it was like, it took 50, 60 years and a friend encouraging her, like, whatever, just do it. Like, to actually just start writing.
Yeah.
People often
And she's
discover writing
great.
later too.
Yeah.
You know, I think that some people just get to the point where they have something they have to say.
Mhm.
We have a great relationship with WestCon and the MFA students there, and they're really such a talented group. We're very lucky to have a lot of really great writing programs in our backyard,
Yeah.
you know, for kids, but also there's a lot of authors groups in the area that, like you
Really?
talked about, they're around. Well,
Tell me
I
where.
hear them because they come here.
Yeah.
You know, there's groups in Maine, there's groups, I mean, all over the place that come from here.
Mm.
So it's wonderful to hear that people are writing and that they're learning how to write, how to, you know, improve their writing and talking to other people about their writing. And
Yeah. Well, that's
all
really,
of
I
that.
mean, there's writing because you need to get it out on the page and because you want to write. And there's writing because you want to be published. They're two very different things because you can be a beautiful writer, but you know, I always tell this and I get dinged a lot for it, but you never know how bad you suck until somebody is giving you a peer review. And sometimes you don't have to agree with everything that people say, but it really makes, if you can look at criticism and see the point, you don't have to agree with it, but if it makes you see the different ways there are to write. And it's just so, I love that process, being in a writing group and, you know, switching back and forth your work and getting feedback on it and giving feedback. It's how I learned. I didn't go to school. I learned by doing.
well,
So.
the other thing that you did do is you took the route of conventional publishing.
Yes.
And I can't say enough good things about that for as long as it takes. I know that there's some people that come in and say, I am not going to take 2 to 5 years to get my book published. And there's nothing I can really say to that, except if you bring me your self-published book, I can't take it. Because either you get the profit or I do. And if I go through a conventional publisher, we all get paid for it. And 2, you've got the built-in publicity
Yes.
that I
Support,
can lean
really.
on so that I don't have to create the publicity for your, you know, to create the interest for your book. And the other thing is a lot of people, and it just astonishes me, never get edited
Yes.
if they self-publish. Yeah, Gabby, I mean, you know what, we've had this discussion
Yes.
before, where people walk in and it's usually, please excuse me, about the death of a parent, the death of a pet, or their cancer journey. 9 times out of 10. And if you're from Pennsylvania, why are my local people gonna know you? And so in fiction, or even if it's nonfiction, to go the conventional publishing route is a process that's so important.
And it's
And it's
very hard.
valuable. It's very hard. So that's the third time I'd say bravo for getting yourself published, because I know what process it takes with every single book for you to go through the editing process, to go back and forth to, I mean, it's not just the cover, it's the writing that you may or may not have to do a lot of revision to, but that's available to you and you.
You said 18 months.
Yes.
How many times did they send it, like, for corrections?
It's gonna sound like I'm bragging.
No way.
It took about an hour to do my edits.
Are you for real? Congratulations. That is awesome.
But
That is
I will tell
awesome.
you, I also have worked as an editor, so by the time
Okay.
and plus my agent is an editorial agent, so I give it to her. She says, kind of tweak this, I'll give it to her, and then we send it out.
That's sweet.
But both Bar Harbor and actually everything so
The
far.
fact that you've been an editor, I mean, that does give you a leg up over a lot of other people. But submitting to that process is
It's very
hard.
hard. I worked as an editor when I worked at, when I was publishing fantasy. I actually worked as an editor because we were all in everybody else's business. And I started reading Slush. And I picked this one book out. It had potential, but it really needed a lot of work. But I loved the story. And so, you know, we made her an offer and I started the editing process with her. And she said to me, well, if you didn't like it the way it was, why'd you take it? And I was like, when we started this process, I told you we were gonna have to really work on this. And she didn't want to. She took it, I said, you want your rights back? You can have them.
Yep, there you go.
But I've worked with some really difficult, I had one, oh my
brutal.
God, do you remember this story? It's a great story, love the story, but it was missing a huge chunk in the middle. It was like, there's something missing here. I think this should, give her some suggestions. She hands me back, it's 50,000 words longer. It's like, wait, this is a whole other book. So, I mean, the process, big, small, or whatever, it's important. It's very important, and it can be very humbling, but if you don't take the criticism to heart. It's always about the book. It's always about the story. It's not about you, it's about your work. And if you can't, you know, that's gonna be really hard on you if you can't take criticism, you know.
It's because they're dopey.
Well, people don't, I don't think most people
I
realize.
think everybody needs it.
Yes, everybody needs it. I'm actually editing for a very darling lady. I just couldn't say no to her. She's writing memoir, which is not my thing. And she's basically written the same book like 7 times now. I think 8, actually. And it's about, she lost her husband and she's very sad. And she just keeps writing the same memoir over and over and over. And she just wants it out. And so I've been editing for her, making it as pretty as we can. And she's really great. I mean, every time she gives me another manuscript, it's better than the last one. It's still memoir, which is very difficult unless you are local or you have something that other people are going to want to know about. Memoir is very tough. And she's writing a very, very intimate story about her and her husband. So she knows it's not going to win any prizes or sell 1 million copies, but
And when do you push and how hard the humor pass of the editing process? Because you always got to have some like breaks in tension and
Yes.
depth and intensity.
yes, that is.
We heard that from somebody else who was doing like memoirs and family memoirs too. That it was like there was this huge thing where they'd gotten it all out, but then they needed something to help everybody along and not just like dive off a cliff. You know?
Yeah, the memoir can be tough, and
It's so own separate.
it's a very personal thing, and you know, most people I think who've written memoirs, at least the ones that I've known, it's more of a I need to get this out sort of thing, and that's fine too.
That's amazing.
I think it's important to do stuff like that, actually.
My stepfather,
Yes.
his Alzheimer's, but he self-published a book about his life. And if you go visit him, he gets the book out, he tells him, he's just looking through the pages, and he doesn't remember a lot, but he can
That's
go
so
through his life.
sweet.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's sweet.
He
That's a
started-
really good reason.
It's
to
a
do
very
it.
nice reason. He started telling us he was 136 years old.
Yeah.
Because when he heard Betty White was 100, and he's like, I'm 136, and I'm like, where did that come from? And so then one day he was mad at someone at breakfast who didn't believe he was 136, and he gets the book and he's like, it's right here. His last chapter started on page 136. And I was like, oh, now it's all come together. Well, now it's reversed. Now his recent birthday, he told me he was 13. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm not even sure how that happened, but we're not 136 anymore. But the book has been very nice for him to just keep remembering, you know.
That's incredible.
his
I,
past, yeah.
don't misunderstand me, I don't think I'm giving the advice not to self-publish, but be reasonable in your expectation
Yes.
that
Oh,
it's not
totally.
going to
Yeah,
hit
yeah, yeah.
the
that's a diff-
bestseller list,
Right.
and that every local bookstore in Connecticut's gonna take it.
I think what I just told you is actually the
best
perfect reason to self-publish.
Absolutely.
You know, I sat there trying to tell him how to make the book better, you know, I'm bringing him all my expertise, and he just looked at me like, I'm not gonna listen to a word you say. Like, this was before he had Alzheimer's, so we should have listened. And- But, you know, and then I realized what he was actually doing, and I was like, they actually, where he overpaid for his self-published book, they gave him some editing services, and so, you know, it wasn't what I would have done, but it's okay. He's happy with it, and the people who read it, and his family, his kids, and his, you know, family up in Massachusetts, everybody likes seeing it. It's Bob's stories.
That is the
and that
perfect reason to
perfect
self,
reason.
that's the
Yeah.
perfect reason to self-publish. I just don't want them to put it on the same
I totally get you.
tier
Yeah.
as real finished.
Well, that's
Artistic
also,
process.
a lot of people have asked, you asked before, what about the books that are in between? A lot of people say, well, you have name recognition now, why don't you just self-publish? It's just not
Oh.
where I am. I'm not saying that there's ever gonna be a time, well, you know, maybe I will publish it and give it to Sharon and my mom, you know, that kind of thing. But it's a completely different road. It's a different experience, it's a different road. Small press, big press, middle-sized press, they've got similarities, but everything.
You
How
don't
many
want it to
jobs?
affect your career.
How many jobs besides writing do you want to take on?
You know, I don't.
I got enough, I got this one right.
Yeah, it's like, that's,
But you know, there are some people, I'm not a fan of it. My books are all good for publishers, but there are some people that have had some huge success with it. You know, I will say, they are in the minority. Like, everyone hears their story, and there's some of them who are hybrid authors who still have publishers. And they sometimes publish their own books because they do make more money when they publish themselves. But they have name recognition, you know, and it works for them.
And
But
millions
the
of
thing you
followers
can't
already.
see is in the
Yes.
pyramid, you're down here, you're not gonna, you know, it's really gonna take a lot for you to get up there, like, if ever.
like Tim
Because
Ferriss,
you're
who
not-
was,
it's a
famous.
full-time
also.
job.
even if you do it full time, you may
Well-
not have the success of the successful self-published authors that you see.
But
because
from a
they
book,
have to take the right time.
Like, what about Orbit?
Yeah,
Sorry?
what's that?
Not everybody can do shades of grey.
The publisher Orbit, they have picked up a ton of self-published fantasy and done like, great, you're under contract now, you have to finish the story, the series, you know? Like, because they saw how important and valuable like the story was, so they pick it up
Mhm.
and
that's
support it
fantasy.
all the way
Yeah.
through the conclusion,
Fantasy world.
you know? So Orbit's been doing that with a bunch of different series, and it's kind of impressive.
Oh, that's great.
But you talk about self-publishing and people that do it successfully and that they're making money. What they don't understand is when they try to bring it to a bookstore,
Oh, no, I understand, I know what you're saying.
Oh,
about
you know what I'm
people.
saying?
She
I'm
does.
talking about
Well,
people
no,
who-
She does.
no,
but-
I'm saying they don't understand.
Yeah,
That when they want to
Oh,
bring
yeah.
it to a bookstore, what they're making has to be shared then,
yeah.
and they don't like that.
I don't think that people that I know that are successful, they're selling differently. I know there's
Oh,
some people that come
absolutely.
in here, I think they market their books differently.
Yeah.
You know?
And it's actually hid on the floor when I came in with my book. And I said, I'm just bringing this in case anyone would like to read it. And she's like, no, I hear this voice. Steve is sitting at the front going, uh-huh. And down here, on that
I hope,
chair,
were we
right?
rude?
No, she was like, don't let her leave the book, don't let her leave the book.
Defensive,
And I
not
said,
rude.
it's
I do
okay,
get
it's
defensive because I
okay,
get
no,
3
it's-
questions a week.
Well, you know,
Yeah.
once we got talking, it was hilarious, but it's just, it's a funny story that I have been known to tell because I'm telling other people that self-publish that, you know, this is not an unusual reaction, I suspect.
No, as a matter of fact, we've had we've had classes and conferences on the choices that we make in dealing with self-published authors. I mean, for instance, publishers, I mean, I don't want to get too far off on this, but there's certain large bookstores like Politics and Prose that have a room for self-publishers. They have an espresso machine where you can get your book published, but then you have to,
yeah.
then you have to volunteer for a day, a week, or whatever, if your book is on the shelf, to help sell
That's
everybody's in the
interesting.
room.
Yeah.
So
Makes it a community
it
thing.
becomes a
It's important.
community
Yeah.
thing, and if I had that kind of room, I'd have no problem with doing something like that.
That's
Just kind of go do your thing and we'll get a kind of, anyway, but again, love this.
Thank you
Love,
so
love
much.
this. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Great book.
Thank you.
And if you haven't had yours signed, please get it signed.
Yes, I'm happy to sign. Does anybody, I didn't hear from, I don't wanna overlook anyone. You good? Yeah?
That's my Jersey friend back there.
Hi, sister.
I have one
Young lady back there, who I don't know.
Ma'am, the script you gave me to read. Do you have, of the words you put in, I have a favorite? Do you have a favorite?
I have to say, my favorite is always gonna be Skjatan and Gork, because I really thought my dad knew better.
It's so fun.
And it does have Skjat, it's tear, and Gorp is gut, so it's more, yes, it's exactly gut wrenching. It's more than you're agitated, it's more than you're angry, you are just being torn apart. So that's one of my favorites. And we
What's
say-
yours?
one second, we say screw the macaroon
Because we always
And you say
pasta,
screw
not
pasta,
macaroni.
because it's macaronis. What's yours?
Gavados.
Gavados.
Just because I was called it all the time.
Yes. Mine were Gavados.
Hard-headed.
Dudoots.
It was interesting how many of those words I know as a little WASPy girl from the CPR. That it was just interesting how many I knew as I read the advanced copy of the book. It's contagious, like it spreads. You
Yeah.
don't have to be in a
So
town
many
family. I knew a lot of those.
Somebody,
words.
who was I talking to?
Yes.
I was, it was the librarian out in Syosset, very Jewish community. And she and her family always used mezamens, which is in the book, and it's, mezamens, it's a little Jewish girl from Syosset, she used mezamens. So, yeah, we kind of infiltrated everything. Are we good? Anything else?